Hi, I'm Dr. Stephen Hassan, and I'm absolutely delighted to have with me Roberta Blevins. Roberta, you and I first met virtually during a 2 day, 49 country global conference on multi level marketing groups and how much damage they've caused to so many people. And I'll just add that the videos are up on MLMconference.com. And we chatted and talked about doing an interview. And then I saw you on the LuLaRich documentary that everyone's watching right now. And I went, ooh, I wonder if Roberta's up for, a talk. And you went, sure,
Of
Steve.
course.
So I want to start by, usually I like to ask people to say, how did you get in? But first, just respond to the documentary because I think people listening to this or watching this will want to get your take on was it good? Was it bad? What was interesting for you? And then we can go back to your story about how you got into LuLaRoe and all that.
Of course. So, the documentary is the last 6 years of my life. It's very cut down to include really just the basics so that anybody who'd never heard of LuLaRoe or really MLM or like the CD underbelly would just get a really good like taste. They left a lot out. I have a companion series on my podcast where we go a little deeper and we talk about some of the deeper issues in the stories and things that happened for people that want to wet their whistle a
So
little
we're
bit
going to
more.
promote your podcast series and the
Yeah,
blog. And
at the end.
you want to give
Yeah.
the link, the name of your podcast series and how
Yeah. So
people
my
can reach you?
podcast is called Life After MLM. And there is a tongue-in-cheek name of the series called Lula, and then, a word that rhymes with rich. That's on there. That is really kind of like the deeper dive into not only the people that are in LuLaRich, but people that also were in LuLaRoe that can corroborate our stories and tell their sides of things. And you just really get like a 360 view, a little deeper, if that's something that you're interested in.
And there are millions of people who've been victimized by MLMs, not just the people directly victimized, but all the people in their family, their friendship groups, and others who were recruited into it or at least approached. And so
Yeah.
it's a huge number around the world, don't you
Yeah, I
think?
think I have about 60 or so episodes up right now. There's a good portion of them that are or LuLaRoe because of LuLaRich and because of just the people that reached out to me when I started the podcast. But we've talked to people in Amway, we've talked to people in Mary Kay, Kiani, ACN, all kinds of MLMs. So there really is a really good, I guess, mix of all kinds of different stories. But what you learn as you listen to the podcast is the stories are all the same. Really, the only thing that changes are the people, the places, and the company.
Right.
It's very interesting.
It's the psychological, deceptive manipulation, buy into the dream. You have to believe it 100%. And if you don't succeed, it's your fault because you weren't
Yep.
pure enough, you weren't committed enough, you weren't this, you weren't that. And the leader of the doctrine in the group is always perfect and wonderful, and you can't criticize it to the outside world or anyone below you. You can only complain to your upline. I think Amway was my first real cult that I dealt with MLMs, but they have spawned so many other splinter
So
type
many.
groups. And I should say, because we haven't mentioned it yet, they're pyramid schemes. What is a
Yes.
pyramid scheme? It is a fraud. People like
Yeah.
Robert Fitzpatrick has been talking about this forever. John Taylor, Douglas Brooks, William Keep, who sponsored the MLM conference, have been talking about this for decades. And yet, the MLMs have this powerful lobby, DSA, Direct Selling Association, and they give lots of money to politicians so nobody enforces the law. And they
Absolutely.
do this business thing where they rip people off for billions and then they get slapped on and they have to give few hundred million, in damages. But what about the
Pennies.
psychological abuse? and enslavement of millions of people. That should be a crime.
Right.
So forgive me for talking too much. I want to bring it back to you, Roberta. Tell our listeners how you got interested in this whole topic of MLMs as a cult.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, it goes back to what we were talking about originally, where, one of the things that they don't talk about in the documentary is how I've had my boots on the ground for the past 4 years. I've been speaking out against LuLaRoe for more than twice as long than I was in. I was in for roughly 18 to 20 months, and I've been speaking out since the day I left. So they don't really cover that.
Let me
in the
first
documentary.
applaud you.
Thank you.
Speaking out when you realize it's a fraud and helping other people. It's such a great thing, and I hope we can
Absolutely.
help inspire other people if they're willing and ready to share their story to please I got out, you know.
Yes. Yes. I'm actually working with I Got Out right now too. We're going to do some stuff as well. Really incredible organization. So for me, like, I saw weird things, and I've been a hairstylist and running my own business for 20 years. So there were weird things that I saw in LuLaRoe where I was like, couldn't you just get me a new thing? And they're like, we don't do that. That made me start thinking like, well, that's not how a real business is run. This is strange. And what happened was when I would come to people with legitimate business issues, and I would get canned responses of, oh, don't focus on the negative, just focus on the income producing. I was like, but this is part of business. And it started to make me realize that maybe this wasn't a business. And then the psychological aspect of like the excommunication when I left, the gaslighting when presented with like factual things I was holding and they were telling me I was the only one, things like that. I started feeling crazy. And I was like, what is going on? Like, I can't be the only one. This has happened to me 4 times. There's no way I'm the only one. There's just no way. It's mathematically impossible. And that was the sort of stuff, right? The factual stuff is what I couldn't look past. They
Mm-hmm.
could give me their hogwash all day, but I'm like, okay, yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense, but here's this question. And they're like, so that was the sort of stuff that made me start thinking, this is not what it appears to be. But
Mm-hmm.
anytime I had any sort of question like that, you know what happens? You get love bombed. You get given a token, a trinket, a gift. You get thrown back to the wolves. And, oh, well, we're going to give you this thing. Isn't it so great? And you forget about the problems for just
Yeah,
a little bit longer.
distraction is a major technique of the controllers. Keep you so busy you don't have time to sleep properly, to think clearly, to do independent research, to do reality testing. But you just said something that made me want to ask a question. You said you've been through this 4 times. What were the 4 times you were just mentioning?
So what I talk about in the documentary, I use the word, and I don't even remember saying this, but I use the word dead fart leggings. And it was the smell that was coming out of the clothes. And I could not for the life of me understand why I was getting things that smelled like dead animals. I live in the country. I know what a dead rat smells like. Like, I was like, this is putrid. And when asked and said, hey, what's going on? Like, this is a defect. I can't sell this to someone. They were like, oh, well, send us a picture. And I was like, you can't take a picture of smell. Like, I don't understand. Those don't look defective. I'm like, of course they don't look defective. Like, let's use our other senses here. It's not about the look.
So it was
There's
four
more than one
times
problem.
trying to complain and they weren't responding. Now I
The
get it.
complaints, like I got, it was 4 different packages that I got that had massive unexplainable defects that were like, that's weird. Wet stuff, um, moldy stuff. There was some sun bleached stuff, and there was this stinky stuff. And they kept saying, well, that's weird. That's never happened before. And I'm thinking, there's no way in probable anything that I'm the only one that's getting these. Like, there
Yep.
has to be someone else. So that gaslighting was sort of like the beginning. And it just sort of stayed with me. And even here's another bite model thing. I was asked to spy on other people because there were people that were speaking out and they're spreading rumors. And I was asked, oh, well, you know about blogging. Go read this blog. I mean, that was literally my only qualification for spying on this person, was that I had once also had a blog. I mean,
Mm.
ridiculous. And they asked me like, oh, is she legitimate? And I said, I don't know. And held my tongue, because I was like, oh my God, what this woman is talking about, I've experienced some of this. So if this one's true, maybe this one's true. And they said,
Uh-huh.
okay, well, now that you confirm that she's a hack, don't read her blog anymore. I said, okay. And I read it every day. I checked it every single day. And any story that came out that I could corroborate was just one other seed and one other root that was making that crack even bigger than I could have ever imagined.
Mm-hmm.
And it really wasn't until the end when I actually had a conversation with my upline and I said, look, it's affecting my family. It's affecting my mental health. I'm having anxiety. I'm having depression. Like, I'm up and down. I can't control my emotions. I'm freaking out. Like this, I can't do this anymore. And instead of what you would expect somebody to say, who you think is your friend in this situation, like, oh my God, I am so sorry this is happening to you. Please take the time. She tried to convince me to stay until Christmas, which was another 3 or 4 months. And I thought, no, like I'm telling you, I want out and you're convincing me to stay. Like, what is going on? I remember going home being like, I can't do this, like resigning. She came after me 15 minutes after I resigned. I thought we agreed to stay. It was the most ridiculous thing. I had even more anxiety. It was horrible. I had no idea what was happening to me. I'm like, this is not normal. Leaving a business shouldn't put me into like emotional ruin. And it wasn't until I sat down and watched Leah Remini's show and thought, you know what, I'm just going to take a day. I'm not going to think about like all the crap happening in my life. And I'm just going to enjoy this. And it was a reunion episode. And I'm sitting there on the couch and I burst into tears because every single person speaking on Leah's show that was giving an example, I could find an example that had happened to me that matched in LuLaRoe. And I remember sitting there with tears pouring down my face. And I said to myself out loud, oh my God, I'm in a cult.
Good for you. And have you told Leah that her show helped you?
Well,
Because she'd love to hear.
Right? I don't personally have a direct contact to Leah, but I did tell Sarah Edmondson because I just did a little bit culty, and she's like, I'm going to tell Leah. So, I mean, I would love if Leah just was like, hey, because oh my God, like Leah saved my life. I have a t-shirt that says Leah Remini is my spirit animal that I made, and I wore
That's wonderful. Yeah. So I was on an episode at the end of the first season with Mike Rinder, and for me it was utterly surreal because for decades he was the enemy. He was the head of the Gestapo of Scientology, who was harassing me and my friends. And there I am sitting with him dissing Scientology. It was like, wow, is this really... Pinch me. Is this really true? It was emotional for me. But I would just do a short video. Leah, watching your show, help me put the dots together, and then just CC Mike Rinder and her on any social media, and I'm sure she'll see it.
Yeah, I mean, she literally saved my life. Like,
it's one of the great things, and I'm sure you're helping lots of people too who are listening to your podcast. Doesn't it feel great?
It feels amazing. And it's so funny to me because like I'm a kid of the 90s. So I grew up watching Leah on Saved by the Bell. And it's like so funny to me that she saved my life, like just really did. So, you know, yeah, I get really emotional thinking about that because I also have a friend, my friend Jenna, who famously left Scientology and wrote a book about it. And so before I even was in LuLaRoe, I was friends with Jenna, and
it must be Jenna Miscavige. It's the only Jenna I know.
It is Jenna. Jenna in Dallas. I grew up with Dallas and met
small
Jenna
world.
So small, right? Met Jenna here in San Diego at a dance studio that her sister-in-law, who's a friend of mine, owned, and we became friends, and I read her book. And all of this happened before I joined LuLaRoe. And so that was another person. When I decided, hey, I think this is what's going on, I looked to them. I looked to Leah and I looked to Jenna, and I said, if they can leave a cult and stand up and be a badass woman and say, hey, I'm not stupid. I'm not this person. I was vulnerable and I was taken advantage of. I'm not the bad guy here, and educate other people. Like, I mean, they are some of the most wonderful women in the whole entire world. And like to even be able to follow in their footsteps is just so humbling to me.
It's a wonderful thing. And I do want to say that when I did that 2-day MLM conference, one thing that I did not know was 75% of all victims of MLMs are women.
Yep.
I did not know that statistic, how high That is. And in particular with the LuLaRich, which the leaders are Mormon, so they're putting in the religious thing, the man should be the head of the household crap. You
Yep.
know, I'm saying crap because I grew up, a feminist where I have two older sisters, and it's like, hello, women have equal rights.
Right.
This isn't the dark ages anymore. So anyway, yeah, but knowledge is power, and to explain it to people in ways that actually they can use to avert tragic, commitments. And so I just applaud all former members like yourself that are taking lemons and making them into lemonade and serving it up to the larger population. It's awesome and it's wonderful, and I want to thank you. So, essentially, what do you want to say to a protect people? Like what's a typical recruitment scenario that people their antenna should go up and do MLM alert, MLM alert. Like for me, one of the things, because people hit me up and they want to talk to me about a great opportunity, right? And I'm like, tell me what it is. Oh, I need to meet with you. No, you don't. Just tell me what it is.
Yeah. So
Oh, I've made a fortune. Show me your tax returns for the last 3 years from your accountant, and then I'll talk with you if you've
Right.
made what you've said you made.
So I would say that some of the MLM red flags that you would look for, first of all, they're going to be looking for people that are vulnerable. So if you know that you're vulnerable, you need to be like on double red alert.
Great advice.
Yeah, if you've lost anybody recently, if you've lost your job, if you just had a baby, if you just got married, literally anything that's going to sort of throw you off kilter and make you more susceptible, be on
Well,
double
the
red alert.
pandemic has affected
Right.
everybody.
Right. So now we're
The
on triple red
economy
alert.
is affecting almost everybody anyway, right? But I
Yeah.
love that first nugget of wisdom, which is be self aware that if you or a loved one is going through a hard time, that's the time to have more connections to trustworthy people and not trust strangers or others with these new ideas that sound too good to be true.
Right.
Pick it up.
So to add on to that, yes, like trust your inner circle. Trust people that aren't associated with what you're trying to do, right? If you're being recruited by something, ask people's experiences. Talk to people that have left. You can find them, trust me. Talk to people that have left. Talk to people that had good experiences that left, and talk to people that had bad experiences that have left. Because I think it's really good to get both sides of everything and really find a middle ground for you and make your decision for yourself, because ultimately it is your decision at the end of the day. And there's a lot of personal responsibility that, we do have to take. So really trust your inner circle. Your mom loves you. If your mom goes, this seems kind of fishy, your mom's not a hater. Your mom just loves you and she wants you to look deeper. If your best friend says the same thing, you don't have to cut them out. It's not because people are jealous of you or hate you or think that you're
Right.
bad. The people that love you and know you better than a stranger you met 3 days ago that thinks you're a rock star.
Right.
The people that are going to come for you are going to use all the stuff that you read in the bite model. I use the bite model all the time for people. Like, hey, that's right out of P. That's number 4. Like, it's so important. I
Thank
call
you.
it out constantly. I'm like, so if you can go down the list, if you do have a meeting with someone like this, listen for these red flags. An amazing opportunity, unlimited income. There's no such thing as unlimited income. There's no such thing as unlimited opportunity. There's a limit to things. There are only so many people on earth. So unlimited opportunity is a farce right off the bat.
Yep.
Any of that double speak, reading Robert's book, Ponzinomics, is fantastic. He talks about the double speak.
Robert Fitzpatrick.
Robert Fitzpatrick.
Yep.
Yes, he's incredible. Good. I love Bob. You just be on high alert. I talk about this on my TikTok too. We talk about these red flags, the opportunity, the unlimited, really this false language of femininity or masculinity that's like, be a boss babe, don't you want to be like the man you were born to be, like that sort of like really like gender specific things. Those are going to be really big red flags as well, because they're going to want to prey on your insecurities of maybe not thinking that you make enough money to be the man that you need to be to have the beautiful wife, house, car, and kids, so that they're
Yep.
going to really focus on that. Or a mother, like, don't you want to be more than just a mom? Don't you want to be more than just a wife? And they're going to take the things that you're really proud of and they're going to make them seem maybe like you shouldn't be proud, because there's more to life than what you're happy with. So those are also a lot of things too. And that's just the psychological aspect of it. If they're not going to tell you the name of their business before getting on a Zoom call or meeting you at Starbucks, that's a red flag. If they can't show you their income and say, look, at these are my bank statements, that's a red flag. Also, check out their income disclosure statement. I guarantee you most people aren't making anything. Check out their compensation plan and see what you actually have to do to hit those numbers that they're saying is possible. Most of these people have thousands of people in their downline to hit those numbers, and those are requirements. So if you don't think you can get 1,000 people underneath you, then most likely you're not going to be at the top of the pyramid, and you're going to be one of the 99.7 that loses after all is said and done.
99.7 lose money.
Yeah. When you take your opportunity costs, your sunk costs, your expenses, your time, all of that, you're losing. You're 99.7 lose across the board, right?
Yeah.
Here's the fun thing though. Gambling is 95%. So you're actually going to make more money throwing $100 bill in a slot machine than $100 bill in an MLM.
Wow, I haven't heard that one before. That's good, Roberta.
And the really fun fact is those illegal ones, the ones that everybody goes, well, pyramid schemes are illegal, hun. Those ones, the actually illegal ones that get shut down, they have a 90.7% loss rate. So you
Wow.
have a 9% better chance than the illegal ones.
I
Than the
didn't
ones
know
the government
that
protects.
statistic either. I do want to add another dimension that because I'm an old fogey and I was recruited into the Moonies when I was 19 back in 1974, before cell phones were invented and
Yeah.
before the internet and everything. But I want to say that now nowadays 2021, we know that Cambridge Analytica hacked into Facebook and
Mm-hmm.
gathered all this data on people's preferences, every like, who they knew, friendships, and lists and things like that. And we also know the Social Dilemma documentary that Tristan Harris did that talks about how these platforms are made to be hypnotic and addictive,
Yeah.
to steal your attention, to make you stay for excessive amounts of time. And then there's another documentary, people you may know, that talks about a company called Glue, Gloo. Do you know about Glue?
I don't know about glue.
Glue is buys the dark data on everybody and sells it to third parties so they can identify people who are susceptible. Why? Because they're Googling depression, anxiety, or
Wow.
they are liking, podcasts talking about mental health struggles or divorce or death or whatever. So they're using the internet and the data that is collected about us. And I believe the information is 5,000 data points on every voting American that's now on the dark
Wow.
web, which means that AI knows you better than you know yourself. And this is what we're dealing with now in the 21st century, not just the human influence piece, but what's happening to us online.
Right. And
To
that
induct.
we as humans can control that AI and be like, hey, I'm looking for people who are vulnerable, that like makeup and want more in their life. And then all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden, every single vulnerable stay-at-home mom that's like, I wish there was something else. I love makeup, is seeing ads for all of these MLM makeup companies
Right,
that are all saying, we are the answer you've been praying for.
right. And then there's the folks, unfortunately, who were praying that morning, going, God, tell me what to do.
Show me a
And then
sign.
show me a sign and knock, knock, ring, ring, or something on your social media platform. And then the mind tries to connect the dots and go, well, this must be the message from the divine.
Yeah.
So beyond that, so I've asked you to like share some wisdom about helping people to avert getting recruited. What saith thou to people who are currently involved but starting to question where they're willing to maybe listen to something like this?
Yeah, so that's actually really great because I'm getting so many emails from people. I don't want to say daily because it isn't daily, but weekly, of people saying, "Oh my God, Roberta, I saw LuLaRich. My friends were like, you got to see this. I watched it. I felt so many similarities to my MLM XYZ. I've heard them all so far. Oh my God, I was already sort of feeling this way. You put into words what I could not convey myself, the feelings I was feeling. I think I'm in a cult. I think I'm in, and they say I'm in this one. What now? Like I'm still in. How do I leave? What's going on? And it's hard, leaving an MLM. They're cults. They really, really, truly are. They're commercial cults, is what we call them. So
Yep, exactly.
they might not be as as severe as some of the other like really like overtly religious cults that are doing beatings and things
Like
like
ISIS and Taliban.
that.
Yeah.
Right. So they're not going to be as nearly as extreme as those, but they're still cults nonetheless. They're baby cults, right? And they still mess with you.
Wouldn't call them baby. I would call them commercial cults.
Yeah. Okay, maybe not baby cults.
That
They
don't
definitely are little monsters.
and they're trying to appear to be legal businesses,
Right.
so
Right.
they do have some constraints, unlike
Yeah.
the Taliban in Afghanistan.
So
But
if you're in and you're feeling these things and you're listening to the anti-MLM community and we're planting seeds, the best thing to do is to just really be open and willing and listen, because you have been told for however many years that you've been in your MLM that I, or the community in which I hang out in, is
right,
the enemy. And that we're haters and that we want to hurt you and we're jealous of you and we never want to see you succeed. And it's our favorite thing in the world to tear down women. And that could not be farther from the truth.
right.
We are all about women empowerment and men empowerment as well on this side. 25%
Men
of
get
men,
conned also.
they get conned too, and they follow me and we talk about it. I have men on my podcast all the time sharing their stories as well. Be open to the message. I like to tell people education, it's really good, right? So read books about cults, Dr. Hassan stuff. There's going to be all kinds of stuff there. Read the bite model. I send everybody the bite model. I say, you know what? Just go down this checklist and just check off any that you feel even kind of slight. You're like, kind of check it off. And then count and see how many of these. You are going to be so unbelievably surprised. You're not going to realize. You're going to say, wait, those late night Zoom call trainings, those are cult tactics? Yes, they are. They all are. It's all intentional. And so once you begin to see it, you just can't unsee it. And then at that point, you're listening to podcasts like this, you're reading books. Like I said earlier, Ponzinomics is a great one. Cultish by Amanda Montell is another great one to learn about the cult aspects and the way that language is used. We are being manipulated from all sides. And, people say to me, do your research. And I say, oh, okay, I do. I really do my research. I talk to experts all the time. I'm reaching out and saying, I don't understand this, Robert. Can you explain it? I'm going to add Stephen to my list too. I don't understand this, Stephen. Can you explain it? And so I'm always talking to experts and always trying to get this information out there because I want to create, as the new generation and the new face of the MLM cult and everything and the education behind it, I want it to be easily consumable so that you can listen. It's like infotainment. You're getting information, but you're being entertained at the same time. And so you actually want to learn. You're not like, oh, it's boring. It's fun. And you learn and you go, oh my gosh. And you laugh about it and you find catharsis and validation in this and you go, oh my God, I'm not alone. And I can
Right.
laugh about it, because if we don't laugh, we cry. And we can
Mhm.
find it, we can poke fun at ourselves, and we can point out these things. And so the community is incredible. I have never felt the sense of community that I was looking for when I went into MLM that I found in the anti-MLM community. Just incredibly wonderful survivors who are just telling their stories, and we're growing daily. And I'm just so unbelievably proud of everybody. So we would love to have you. We will help you. There are people in there that are experts in everything, and we can help you move out of your MLM and into the real world, however you want to do that.
Yeah, you were touching just now on an exit strategy, how to create a viable exit strategy in your life, given whatever the components are of your unique history and where you're living, etc. For some people, they just need a time out where they're offline, walking in the woods, sleeping, and remembering who they were before they met the group and what they
Absolutely.
wanted to do, what were their values, what were their goals, and to use that perspective once you understand about the influence continuum, the bite model, to go, if I knew then what I know now, if I knew they were lying to me then, what would I have wanted to say if I knew then what I know now? And to rework your own, the narrative, your own story, so that you can see enough that you can feel secure for the rest of your life, that your antenna is up and you're not going to let things float by without going, tell me more about what that is, or why did you use that term? Because that has an association for me of loaded language, for example, or thought stopping, or phobia indoctrination, right? To be able
Yeah.
to name it and claim it, which is an ex-FBI agent, Frank Schaefer, taught me that one. That when you're looking at mind control techniques, if you can name it, you can claim it, and then it doesn't have power over you anymore. Name it,
Absolutely.
claim it.
Right? I say once you see, you can't unsee, but it's the same thing. Once you
Yep.
understand what's happening, it doesn't matter if somebody comes in and tries to tell you, well, no, 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 this is what you're really seeing is this. You're like, no, it's not. You can't
Right.
lie anymore. Once you see the truth, no amount of, falsifying evidence or anything can change that once you see the real.
Right. Well, the thing is to understand the difference between facts and beliefs or opinions. And
Yes.
facts stand up to scrutiny and can be evaluated by many people and poked, and it's still a fact. Whereas an opinion depends on who's espousing it and what context, and there's no facts. Whoops. And I just want to state categorically these magical beliefs that so many cults have, of if you just believe it 100%, it's magically going to happen. The law of attraction, the secret, Hubbard's upper level stuff. If you believe it 100%, you can move object with your mind. I say, do that in a test circumstances that James Randi, the magician, now deceased, would say, yes, this is a testable claim. No one ever claimed the $1,000,000 from the Randi Foundation that said, show us one thing that's psychic. Show us one metaphysical thing and you can have $1,000,000. No one could do it. They were just having a bad day. For some reason, the vibes weren't right when they were with all kinds of excuses,
The
right?
vibes were off. That's definitely what was going on.
Yep, exactly. So, I'm just trying to go through my brain of what else people need to know about, other than we really need to lobby politicians, and unfortunately, money corrupts. And
Yeah.
when the DSA pays politicians and lobbies them and says, get rid of that bill that's being submitted for consumer protection agency. I believe it was Elizabeth Warren that said we need a federal consumer protection agency, which I still think was a great idea. How about doing it? How about funding it? How about creating a checks and balances system that if, there are more than 10 complaints about any business, somebody checks into it and starts doing a little deeper dive in
Right.
it.
I
And how
mean,
about going after the corporate executives and finding them criminally liable?
I think my favorite one was how the DSA really wanted to make sure that supplements were not regulated by the FDA. And they pumped a lot of money into, I believe it was Orrin Hatch's pocket to make sure that
Well,
that
Orrin
didn't
Hatch is
happen.
Utah, and
Yeah.
Utah is the MLM capital of the United States, if not the world.
Yeah. And so it's like,
And
of course, you don't want the FDA to regulate the one thing that you sell that's a total sham, because if the FDA regulated it, your business would cease to exist. So, yeah, let's pump a lot of money into the politicians that will vote no so we can continue to scam people and fly under the radar.
yep, exactly. So,
Yeah.
any other connections that spring to mind of parallels between Scientology and your experience? Because I know a
Ooh.
lot of people have been exposed to the horrors of that cult.
Okay. So, yes, I do want to talk about this. And this is amazing. And I think you'll have a lot of fun with it. So, I've always been the target, like you have, of fair gaming. When I
You have to
left
explain what that is if you're
right,
naming
okay.
it.
So fair gaming is a term that Scientology uses. I believe it was a religious right that they had that was overturned because it's absurd. But
Well,
it was
Hubbard said it, so therefore,
right,
because he's source, their word for God.
right.
Yeah,
So it was their religious word that if anybody spoke out against Scientology, then it was their religious right to silence them in literally any way that they possibly could. I mean, just really horrific things, harassing and stalking and spreading lies and libel and defamation, just whatever, right? Obviously, that I think was overturned a while ago.
it
Is
wasn't
this is
overturned at all. They got
no?
in trouble for PR. So
Oh,
he
that's what
did
it was.
another
Okay.
letter saying, we're not going to call it that anymore.
Right. But they
But
still
that
do
didn't
it.
stop the fair
Right.
gaming policy because I'm still fair gamed, and
Right.
so is Mike Rinder and Leah
Right.
Remini and everyone else.
So it's like internally or whatever, oh, it's always these like, oh, we'll look into it. The same with MLMs, like, oh, that's a problem, well, we'll make a policy change, but nothing actually ever changes. They say it changes, but nothing actually ever changes.
Right.
So like for fair gaming, it's the same, right?
Yep.
So fair gaming in Scientology is a little different than fair gaming in MLM, but it's the tactics are similar. I haven't had any black vans show up to my house, but I have been censored and silenced a lot. When I first left LuLaRoe, I was excommunicated to the point where I went into like really bad mental state with probably what was PTSD, but I never ever got diagnosed for it. Lots of anxiety, a lot of depression, just really like probably one of my lowest states I've ever been in. I'm a very outgoing person. And so the fact that all of these people who claim to be my friends and that just ripped it out from underneath me was really, really hard for me to manage. I was just like,
Sure.
what did
So
I do?
Scientology calls it disconnection,
Right.
right? Some groups call it shunning, disfellowshipping in the JWs, or excommunication. But basically, the order comes from down the pyramid. Don't talk to Roberta Blevins. Don't talk to Steve Hassan. Don't read anything they write or anything they say. And
Right.
people then internalize it as they have cooties,
Mhm.
they're bad for my
Yeah.
soul. Something bad's they're gonna steal my dream. They're gonna dream stealers or whatever. The phobias kick in, right?
Yeah.
And so
So,
the whole fair gaming things is essentially they think they're above the law because they're doing God's will, or they're doing the highest service on the planet
yeah.
is the belief, the dream.
I mean, they honestly believe like they're protecting, in this case, Mark and Deanne and LuLaRoe, which is fine. I mean, they're not correct, but that's what they believe. That's what they've been told to believe. I remember in the beginning, I was told like from someone, hey, like they're literally saying from the top ranks, like if you leave, to block you, like you're a liar, all this stuff. I mean, I've seen some of the most ridiculous things, like rumors spread about me. It's absolutely
So
insane.
that falls under the eye of the bite model of information control, not only lying to get people in, but doing propaganda, telling people you can't talk to critics and former members. It's part of
Yeah.
that piece of it.
And then I did the Vice documentary, which is a smaller documentary, which actually led to LuLaRich. And in there, I talk about dopamine and I talk about the excommunication and I talk about that. That then led to the second round of being fair gamed. But I was not nearly as well known on the internet 2 or 3 years ago. And so it wasn't so much other than it just was really annoying. And I was getting a lot of screenshots from people saying they're talking about you. And I'm like, whatever, I don't care. But the most fair gaming that I've received, obviously, was from the day that the LuLaRich trailer dropped. Lots of reports of bullying, reports of illegal goods and services, reports of child harm on my TikTok videos. I was effectively taken down for a week. I couldn't promote the movie on my main account. I had to start a backup because of fair gaming. So I was over there. Then that account got taken down and I was out of TikTok completely, had to go over to Instagram. Luckily, nothing's happened over there, but I keep getting censored on TikTok. Then it would come back. I'd be back for like 2 hours. I'd post a video about how I was back. And then a video from like 2 months later would be mass reported and I'd go down for another week. So it just was going back and forth and back and forth. It's so commonplace to me now. It's ridiculous. It's funny to me though, because the reason that they were trying to prove that I was a liar was because in the trailer, I say, oh my God, I was in a cult. And they don't want people to know that they're a cult. And they know they're a cult.
Ooh.
And so they wanted to
For
censor
the
me.
cult of Trump because people are afraid to use the term. And
I like
when Brian Stelter on CNN did the first major show with the book, the Tennessee legislature actually voted in a bill saying CNN was fake news because they had me on saying that there was a cult of Trump. Right? I mean, it was like the level of cancel culture there was
Right.
like amazing.
Yeah.
And it's still going on because I out so many different cults that are in the cult
Yeah.
of Trump, and they're very powerful and wealthy, and many have deep pockets in the media world, so they
Yeah.
can, threaten, to pull advertising or whatever on us.
It's
But
funny because it literally goes and proves exactly what we said, right? So I made all kinds of predictions before the movie came out based on what I knew and what I'd seen in the trailer. I made all these predictions and literally every single one of them has come true. Like they've come after me, they've taken me down, they've attacked me, they're spreading rumors in the groups. I get screenshots. I'm like, what? Someone accused me of running a hate cult. I thought that
oh,
was
that's an old one for me. They were since '76 when I went on TV against the Moonies. Oh, Steve is the negative messiah. Moon called me the negative messiah because I was leading people straight to hell, he said, because I was encouraging people to leave the cult, right?
yeah.
And yeah, it's been pretty surreal to be doing this for 45 years. Honestly, I never imagined that I would be doing it this long or that I would get a doctorate and be an academic and do a dissertation on undue influence in the law. But here I am because I still
Yeah.
care, and the problem is bigger than ever.
Yeah, it is bigger than ever. And it's so important. And, that's something that we talk about constantly on my podcast is the cult aspect, because so many people come to me and they say, you're a smart girl. How could you get stuck? And I say, it's a cult. And they go, but I don't understand. And I say, it's a cult. And it's like, it's a cult.
Well,
they
so
don't
I
tell
would
you
I would
anything
break
and
it down
manipulate
for
you.
people and say, nobody joins a cult. They get deceptively recruited into what sounds like a great thing that they think is going to benefit them or their community or bring them closer to God. And incrementally, you're brought into a mind trap where you are then indoctrinated, your brains are scrambled, and you're given, it's like your mind is getting hacked. A lot of people like the computer analogy. Some malware gets into your operating system and it's no longer working properly, and you need to identify the virus that entered your computer, clean it out, reboot, so you can start afresh. And there is an analogy that really works with this. The issue for me is we're so addicted to our cell phones and the social media platforms that we really need to use our intellect, the frontal lobe of our brain, over our emotional part of our brain that is about survival. We need to analyze real risks. Like getting ill or dying from COVID is real, and you're 11 times more likely to die by not getting vaccinated than getting vaccinated. Nobody dies from the vaccine. You may be uncomfortable for a day or two, but you have to reason, and you have to have scientists that you trust with the data. And if you're plugged into platforms that are spewing fear and disinformation from Russia, from disaffected CIA agents who want to create chaos and civil war in the United States, or dominionists who want to destroy the separation of church and state, unless you understand these bad actors and their goals and their methods, we're in trouble.
Yeah. And I like to go back to, I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan, and I love the character of Littlefinger, Peter Baelish. And there's a moment in a later season where he's talking about that when people ask things of him, he likes to play a little game. And it's, what is the worst reason that they would want this from you? Like, what is the worst motive someone could have for trying to get you to do something? And I always go there now, because what's the worst thing? Like joining an MLM, the best thing is you make millions of dollars. Well, what's the worst thing? We don't talk about the worst thing. And so I think sometimes, like, what is someone's worst motive when, especially if you don't know them? Like, why all of a sudden am I this rock star that you can't stop thinking about because you saw my Instagram feed? Like, what's going on? Like, what is the worst reason? And usually the answer is that they're a predator and they're preying on you for some reason. For me, it is like, it's unfortunate that that's the way that we sort of have to go about these opportunities that seem too good to be true, but we can't really go into them with these like, oh my God, I just got the most incredible thing. You really have to take a step back and say, okay, may I have some more information?
Yes. I want to know everything. And I guess I want to add at this moment just the profile of a malignant narcissist is the profile everyone needs to be aware of. And I'll just name them really fast because I happen to have a handy dandy sheet right off of my freedomofmind.com website. Grandiose self-centered behavior, fantasies of power, success, and attractiveness, need for praise and admiration, sense of entitlement, lack of empathy. That's normal narcissism. And then the pathological part is thinking you're above the law, pathological lying, interpersonally exploitative, sadistic, harassing and silencing, violent, paranoid, and inability to trust. Right? And so, and I just want to state that the phenomenon as I experienced it in the Moonies and in all these decades working with so many people, it's like a dual identity dissociative model that works best. The old Steve, the cult Steve that was suppressing me. But I want to state categorically that the higher up I got in the Moonies, and I was told to be a small sun young moon, walk like him, talk like him, think like him, etc., the more a malignant narcissist I became. And that wasn't me. And then when I got out, people remembered him and was like, "You're a Nazi, Steve. You would do whatever they told you to do." And I'm like, "I know," and I was embarrassed and ashamed about it, right? But there's a lot of people who are exhibiting these, but their authentic self is not any of those. They are deeply empathic,
Right.
caring, kind people who would never lie or think they're above the law, or be sadistic or whatever,
Yeah.
or gaslight somebody on purpose.
A lot of people asked me, they were like, why did Mark and Deanne even agree to be in this? And I said, they're narcissists.
That's right.
They were given the opportunity. We're going to tell this story. Do you want to tell your side, or should we tell it for you? What's a narcissist going to say?
Yeah, so there's not a lot of cult leaders who've agreed to be filmed, and this is why, because they are their own worst enemies, especially if they're under questioning of people who actually know what the issues are. And I want to remember a guy named Frederick Lenz, who claimed to be Rama, and Atmanandi claimed to be a reincarnated enlightened master from the continent of Atlantis. Anyway, Dateline did an expose on him with former members, and John Hockenberry, who did the segment, was challenging him about all of the lies. And after the segment aired, he killed himself.
What?
And his girlfriend, and tried to kill his dog, but didn't succeed. But narcissists hate being exposed. That's their biggest fear.
Yeah.
And when Scientology threatens me, I'm like, oh, just write a knowledge report that you've just motivated me to do more PR against Scientology. I think I'm going to share a few videos of top former officials now that you've threatened me. Just tell your leaders that every time you do something with me, that you'll have a lot of bad information, truthful but bad, going out about your group. And you know what? Over time, they cut it out.
Yeah. It's fun though, because the MLMs, my things that I have done have been mentioned in like the DSA the DSA newsletters, like those hateful anti-MLMers, and they reference things I've done. And I'm like, oh my God, have I made it? Like, I'm in the cult propaganda as being the enemy. Like, I've made it. For me, that's making it. I would love a copy of that.
High five.
High five. Right? I was like, that's me. They said Vice documentary. That's me. They could have put my name, but they didn't, but they could have.
Well, they don't want to make it easier for people to find you either.
Right? It's amazing. And so I know that we're creating so much movement on the backside. I see it in my inbox every single time that I tell a story on the podcast that gets out there and people relate to it. I've got more emails the next day saying, I'm ready to tell my story too. I've got people that are coming out that have told their story anonymously and are now reaching out to me and saying, I'm ready to use my name. I've spoken out anonymously and I'm ready to use my name now. So it's a really, really amazing movement forward. And I'm so happy that the cult aspect of MLM is being exposed, because I think people need to understand, people go, how did I get sucked into this? How did I believe all the lies? And I say, when you can sit there and suspend disbelief for 1 second, and I can tell you a lie and say, you just have to have faith, and you can suspend disbelief in what I'm saying for 1 second. The next time I talk to you, I can make you suspend disbelief for 2 seconds, and then 10 seconds, and then 10 minutes. And then all of a sudden, everything I tell you is truth, and you don't even question it anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of different techniques, and that's part of what we're living through, is just an ever-increasing sophistication through neuroscience about how to hack the brain. One study that I wanted to share was with people who are video gaming with a complete stranger, right? But they were recording their brain activity, and the part of the brain that says this is a friend was activated within 15 minutes of video gaming with a complete stranger who you do not know,
Wow.
and your mind is acting like this is a friend, and you let your guard down because it's a friend.
Right.
When this person could say that they're your age, but they're twice that age, or they can say that they're an American and they're not. You don't know because they're completely anonymous,
Yeah.
right? So,
It's really interesting. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about is, and this is a hypothesis on my end, and I am talking to a couple of my friends that are therapists and in the mental health field that deal with cult and MLM. But I'm seeing a lot of similarities, especially with me and getting my ADHD diagnosis as a 40-year-old woman after leaving the MLM complex and learning that ADHD is a dopamine deficiency. And I've literally spoke about the dopamine addiction I had in MLM since before the Vice documentary. And it's in the Vice documentary, me
yeah.
talking about dopamine. And so for me, realizing it now, and so many people that reach out to me, they're like, I have ADHD too. I got addicted to the dopamine too. And I'm thinking, wow, like, are they all like, they're using those natural chemicals as addictive substances to keep
But that
us
works for everybody,
in,
not just
right?
folks with ADD and ADHD.
Right.
They get dopamine manipulated and addicted as well, for
Yes.
sure. But my son is ADHD, so I know a lot about that particular
Yeah.
one. I have ADD myself, but I've learned how to marshal my active imagination. And one
Yeah.
of the biggest issues for me for a long time was my worrying about the future because I could imagine a billion negative scenarios for anything, and just really realizing I need to be in the present, in my body. And yes, I need to make plans for the future, but I need to have realistic fears about what to plan and what not to do, and just kind of corral, the wild horses in my brain.
Yeah. Well, don't worry, Steve. You're definitely not alone. Worst case scenario is one of my favorite games to play too.
No, I mean the bottom line is we want to survive, right? But we want to
Right.
thrive. And the thing about us, you and me and so many others, is we've experienced the loss of our freedom. We've experienced the loss of our integrity as an adult. And once you realize that, it's so precious and you're not going to give it up again.
No. I will
No.
tell you, like, I feel like a different person. Like, I just feel like empowered. Leaving the MLM and educating myself about MLM and cults made me so empowered. The empowering feeling I wanted when I was in, like everything that I was searching for when I was looking for and thought MLM was the answer, I have found since leaving MLM in such a way that I never thought this would happen. And you know what
What's
I mean?
this?
Like
Talking.
speaking to you or even speaking to anybody that has expertise in anything, asking for my expertise in it too. Like I never thought that would ever happen. And so there's just so many blessings in my life that have come since leaving and speaking out. People say they've been reaching out to me. I just watched a documentary. I'm so sorry for what happened to you. And I tell them, yeah, it sucked, but I would not be who I am and where I am without
Right.
it. So
Right.
I will thank LuLaRoe for that because of LuLaRoe. Deanne knows exactly what that means. That was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my entire life. But because of LuLaRoe, I am who I am now. And I love who I am now.
Yeah, and this is the most fearsome thing to authoritarian cult leaders are former members who are happy and fulfilled and
Yeah.
willing to tell everybody about it. I'm so glad to be out of the Moonies. And I did an interview with a man who had been in my cult for 36 years. He got in like a year after I got in, and he left about 7 years ago. But man, I'm so grateful my family rescued me in 1976 and I got to have a normal life. He didn't.
Right?
He didn't.
Oh,
And that's why I just want to say as we wrap up, the people in your life, don't assume that they haven't had a cult experience. And if you're comfortable talking about yours, elicit, because maybe they'll have been involved with a controlling person. Maybe they had a boss who was a flaming narcissist who abuse them and avoid, hurt them or whatever. But let's destigmatize, the fact that we
Yes.
were conned, that we were manipulated and indoctrinated, and celebrate freedom and
Yeah.
share it with everyone else who doesn't understand the preciousness of being our own self.
Yeah, there is so much comfort and catharsis in talking about this. And so I love connecting with people and sharing our collective cult stories because it really is the best group therapy I could have ever asked for in my entire life.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you so much, Roberta. Continued success, and we'll put up this video and then we'll do a blog, and you can add whatever links you think should be in there to help people get the best set of resources. And thank you so
Yes.
much for
Yes.
speaking
And
out.
if you ever have any time, I would love to have you come talk bite model with us because everybody loves you.
So invite me. It may be a few weeks, but
That's
I'm
totally
game.
fine.
I'm game.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steve. You are
Thank.
seriously, this was a dream come true. So thank you so much.
Oh, my honor. Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.